Good morning, Drawing 1. We're starting our final project today. And I'm going to demonstrate a drawing from a photograph on your gray paper. This is the gray pastel paper from the bookstore. Canson is the brand. We're going to be working with our regular black charcoal sticks that we've been working with on the egg project, and our white Rembrandt pastel, which is in the kit. It looks like this. It's a little long, so you want to break off a piece and take it out of the wrapper, about like that long. Your charcoal pencil, the pencil that has the string that pulls down to sharpen it. Your hard white eraser, which mine's a little dirty now, but it is the white eraser, and your clicky eraser. And then for sketching, and kneaded eraser for correcting line sketch work. And then for sketching purposes, I would actually use the white out of the Conte box that you used on your CD project. It's in your kit, because it's easier to erase than the heavier white. And we're working from a black and white photograph of your choice. You can see what I've selected here. It has a pretty good range of value, which is what I want you guys to look for. A nice amount of whites, grays, and darks. I think my photograph could probably use a little more black. It's a little on the light side. And you also want to look for a nice composition, so strong layout on the page. You notice I have this big empty spot here, which bothers me. So I would have to come up with something to put there, or look for a photograph that uses the whole space well. And you're going to start on the rough side of the paper, so you can feel which side has more of a bumpy surface to it. And that's the side you want to be on, because it allows you to layer the chalk, the pastel, pretty heavily without the paper getting clogged up. So I'm going to start with and the subject matter of your photograph is free choice, can be any subject matter you want. So I'm going to move this closer so you guys can see my demonstration. And I'm going to start with two spheres here with practice techniques for you guys to see, and then I'll work on the finished drawing over here. So if you want to practice, I would do this on the back side, the smooth side of the paper, and try out these two techniques. One, the easier technique, you're using the chalks fairly heavy. You're pressing pretty heavy, and you're not going to see the paper coming through the chalk at the end of the drawing. You're laying on your darks, you're laying on your lights, and you notice I'm using the side of the chalk. You can also use the tip or the corner of the chalk if you want line work, but just for shadow work, you're going to be using it on the side. And remember to break your piece of the heavy black charcoal in half too, it's a little long. And in the middle, we want a gray. So how do you create gray? It's a layer of white and a layer of black mixed together. And it blends super easily because both of these chalks are very soft. When you go to the white side, just pick a clean finger. You could use a paper towel. You could also use your hard white eraser, which by pressing not enough to erase but enough to smear, you can blend the chalk really easily. Okay, and then I feel like I just want to brighten up my whites a little bit. If you don't care for the feel of the chalk on your hand, it bothers you, you can always wear surgical gloves, latex gloves. All right, there's technique number one. And then we would add a background around it so that the ball would pop out. If we were doing this as a finished drawing. Technique number two is you're going to lay the chalk on very sheer. Very transparent. You're not going to press very hard, and you're going to let that gray paper shine through and act as the middle tone gray. So at the edge I can press a little harder because I do want a nice dark, but as I'm coming into the sphere, into the middle, I'm barely touching the paper. And then on the right side where I'm going to have my light, again, very sheer. This is not a smear technique or a blended technique. This is you're actually going to just leave the chalk rough. And then I can press a little bit harder on the right side to get my good white, bright white. And you're not layering the chalk on top of each other. I could come a little darker on my left side here. So it's your choice which technique you want to work with. Most students find the heavier opaque technique more enjoyable to work with. They like the end result. It looks very creamy, almost like an oil painting. And if you make a mistake, it's easy to layer over and correct mistakes. This technique has a beautiful sense of light, luminous light and shadow, but it's a little tricky because you have to work slowly. If you make a mistake, it's a little harder to correct it. If I went too far, let's say I did go too far here, and I realized, oh, I put the black on a little heavy, you can take your kneaded eraser and you can push and pull some of that tone off, some of that charcoal off. Of course, my old antique wooden easel here, there we go, is moving around a little bit. Okay, so that's technique and technique, the opaque or the transparent, and it's your choice which way you go. So now for my drawing of this figure here, I've already started shading in the left half of the face. Let's do a little demonstration of how I would go about copying this photograph and trying to copy all of the values, the different tones, and the detail onto my paper. And we are using the whole sheet of paper. So I'm going to start with the above the eye here, and I notice that it gets a little darker. So I'm going to lay in my dark. I can smooth it again with paper towel, with my finger, or with my hard white eraser. I notice it's a little lighter right above the eye, the apex of the eye there. So I could come in and add whites. Remember, this paper is made for layering. I felt like, oh, I went too light. That's all right, just come back in and darken that top area there. Okay, I notice the eyeball has a shadow under here. I'm going to add details last. So let's say your photograph was of a dog or a cat. You would build the basic shadows, light and shadow, and then you would add the fur texture last. So I noticed that there's like a little eyeliner, a small black line and a white line on the top and the bottom of the eye, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm just going to build my tone, and then I'll add that last. So I noticed the top part of the eye is a little lighter than the bottom. So add a highlight there. I can use my clicky eraser to smooth out edges of shapes. And you will see your first coat of chalk that you lay down on this cheek area. You'll see it very clearly. It's very bumpy. So the chalk is picking up just the top surface of the paper, and it gets a little frustrating. Well, how do I smooth that out? So the quickest way I find is to use, again, that hard eraser, and it'll force the chalk down into the crevices of the paper and smooth it out. And another little trick is 2 or 3 coats. So by the time you build up your chalk, heavier and heavier, you'll see less and less of that bumpy texture. And it'll start to smooth out for you. Okay, I notice it's a little darker under the eye here. So while I'm working here, I'm going to go ahead and add that in. So the important thing to remember is don't ever worry about, oh, I went too dark, went too light, because it's a really workable medium. You can change it at any point. It's not like paint where it dries on you, or watercolor where you put it down and that's it. You're stuck with it. It's a super flexible medium. So now I've got my little eye line, my little dark line here. I can add that in and then smooth it out with your clicky. Now the little black line at the bottom of the eye, I think I'm going to grab my charcoal pencil. It's just easier for me to work with. And then the same thing for the little line at the top of the eye. I'm going to add that charcoal pencil. And then do a little smooth out. All right, and then I've got my eyeliner at the top of the eye. And then give that a little smooth out. It will erase completely. This paper is pretty tough, so if I decided I didn't like my eye at all and I wanted to move it, you could just erase and go right back to bare paper with your hard eraser. It is possible to do that. Okay, now I'm building my, and I notice that my line comes out all the way almost to the ear. Okay, now I want to build my cheek. So I notice there's a shadow that runs under the cheek right here. So I might just go ahead and lay that in, get a coat of the black in. Again, it's super bumpy the first time you lay that first coat in. You're going to build up your layers. If you're working flat and you get a lot of this pastel dust building up on your paper, just have a trash can next by that you can take your paper and just dump off the excess so it won't interfere with your working on the drawing. Okay, we're getting pretty close here. I'll save the ear for another day to keep this demonstration reasonably short. But I think you guys get the gist, and don't forget that background has to be done. We're not leaving the background the way it is. So my background is gray up here and just kind of a fading to almost white. Some areas it looks like there's a little symbol here. So we are dealing with the background. Photographs can be your own photograph that you guys have taken. You can work from, I would suggest not working from black and white unless you want to work it till you take a colored photograph and translate it into black and white, but sometimes the colors don't really work. So please try and look for a black and white photograph, either your own, or you can Google black and white photography, free choice subject matter. Again, we're just looking for a nice range of value. You want the darks all the way to the lights, and then you want a strong composition. You want your layout to be interesting. All right, have fun and email me or text me any questions. Thank you.